or anything. So yeah.
Yeah, the thing they were saying something about it living in the mempool actively, and then like eventually it would be revoked. And I didn't quite understand what they were referring to because it didn't seem to apply to what I was working with when I was playing with the oodle. So I think maybe it just isn't really a concern, whatever they were running into in this case. The idea of upgrading contracts is very interesting, though. One thing that occurs to me is, maybe I want to make a smart contract, but I want to make it to where it can't be upgraded because it's too dangerous to upgrade. Like, to me, some contracts are like, okay, this should be a generally available contract, but if it could be replaced, then someone could just reroute all the money that's in every contract being used, right? And you wouldn't want that. So to more provably show that it's safe, removing the option to replace it would be good, but then you run into a potentially new problem, which is if there is a significant change in the ABI or whatever, maybe the contract would cease to function and it would panic. Is that a thing that is a concern?
Yeah, I mean, you have to for the life of the objects, you sort of have to make sure that they will continue to work, right? Otherwise, you will have kind of this hard fork situation, or potentially a lot of angry people. So I think you kind of are forced to post mainnet essentially adhere to that compatibility. But there are options for, upgraded, uh, let's say we, changed a bunch of characteristics about the engine. We could, of course, signal that we want to use the new engine in this one and the old engine in that. But we would have to keep the old engine in that case. So yeah, I mean, post mainnet, there's a lot of these extra things to consider, which is why, like, we're breaking things now. In fact, planning on a testnet reset probably next week to introduce some of the things we've been talking, like the TapScript stuff, and some other breaking changes that have not gone into the current main testnet. And in future we would have to work around that and make sure that things continue to work. But right now, like, we'd go for simpler code and you know rather than doing a full upgrade to the protocol.
All right, it looks like we have a question in the chat. I heard someone mention somewhere, a previous Tari show, that the initial rollout of the oodle would be more staggered and start off more centralized until the network reaches a certain number of validator nodes for Cerebus to kick in. Can you explain how that process will work a bit more? At what point after launch will community members be able to run their own validator nodes?
Yeah, that's it's actually quite a big question. Yeah, I think so. So the centralized, we all want things to be, decentralized, and um, a lot of these L2s, and specifically ones using BFT, are more centralized than you think, or are fully centralized. If you look at like Liquid, that's a federation. So this, this is like what Nakamoto consensus gives you, like this fully permissionless sort of anyone can make a block kind of thing. And BFT consensus, which UTL essentially runs like a hot stuff, um, is different in that regard. You need like this list of validators. So there's like a registration process, and you can't just like make a block. You need to be part of that list, and you don't have energy sort of behind the ability to produce a valid block. It's so like we don't currently have like that mechanism. Whether that is proof of stake, or there's no settled mechanism for that. Whether it's slashing stake or whatever else. So launching in a centralized way allows us to see what is useful, and sort of allow us to upgrade things. Again, the upgrading is like a lot easier if you can just upgrade the validators all at once or at a similar time. So I think that is the plus side of it, of course, but with very, quite big downsides, let's say, in terms of not being decentralized or permissionless. It is one of the harder problems in the space, actually, to be completely permissionless, and then also, like, there's the sharded aspect with the Cerberus side, which greatly complicates things. So I'm not sure, but just to say that there is probably like some significant work to come to enable that. Like if a node just goes away, there must be some mechanism to not only disincentivize that, but to allow the network to continue to function efficiently. And right now, like you have that normal BFT assumption of a 2/3 majority, and that holds, but there there's no mechanism for essentially getting rid of that node, or at the moment, and that we have experimented with other things like voting on evicting and things like that, but these things are not necessarily the way to go. So yeah, I mean, maybe it would be a proof of stake thing, a federated thing initially. Like federated is possible because you have people that you at least know like are incentivized in some way to keep the node up and running well. But yeah, to do that permission is like a kind of a whole can of worms to open up. Like people shut down their nodes sometimes, and and like you wouldn't also like want to run it on your laptop. So yeah, there's a lot more considerations than with Nakamoto consensus. So yeah, that's something that we're definitely working towards, but there's lots to consider there.
All right, I have an interesting question here. What happens if someone makes a smart contract with an infinite loop?
We have a test for that. But yeah, essentially what happens is, as WASM runs, it's running a bunch of WASM opcodes, and each opcode has essentially a cost function associated with it. So we allocate a budget to that, and as that budget is exhausted, your transaction is aborted.
Okay, cool. Oh, someone is asking to speak, so let me invite John here to ask their question. Are you with us, John? Looks like they... Oh,
Yes.
there we go.
Oh,
Hey.
right. Hey, everybody. I have a question for Stan. He was talking about a whitelist of validators to start with, which is a good idea, I think, for security purpose and so on. But in the future, is the validator set is going to be open to outside people or more people? Is that the goal in a certain time frame?
Yeah. So yeah, as I said, it's not certain what kind of time frame that would be, but that is essentially the idea. The process that does work now, but is kind of locked off, is that you would submit a validator, a colored coin validator registration UTXO on the layer 1, and the layer 2 validators will pick that up, and when they pick that up, you're essentially part of the list. So yeah, there's certain rules that would be on that UTXO, and potentially that would be your stake, if we're going full proof of stake, and that stake would either be burnt into the second layer, or locked and then there would be some kind of sort of peg out mechanism. But you know, if in the case of slashing, you would want to lose your funds. So the likely case is that you would be burnt into the L2. But that's the mechanism that's planned is L1 registration to become an L2 validator.
All right, that sounds good. And when it comes to the stake, do you have an idea of the amount of XTMs required?
I had no idea at this stage. I think it's currently set to 0, but as I said, it doesn't work on mainnet. I
More
do
than
not
one.
know about-
More than one.
Yeah, more than one. It's not 0.
And less than 21 billion.
All right, so
Yeah, I
that's
mean, we want it to
something.
be accessible, right? You should be able to afford it, ideally. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Actually, that leaves me with another question. So I know on like chains like Ethereum, there is a and I don't fully understand how this works, so maybe you can enlighten me. I know on chains like Ethereum, you are given the option to contribute your Ethereum to staking, and then there's some kind of yield mechanism where you get some amount back. Was there expectation of a yield mechanism on the L2 for staking?
So you talk about delegated stake, that kind of.
Well, I think there are two things. Basically, what is the compensation for stakers and for validator node operators? And so there are two things here. So one is, you know, there's a meaningful percentage of the transaction fees on the L2 that are effectively paid to validator node operators. In other words, people who are staking. That's number one. And then number two, and Stan, we've not directly talked about this, but it's something that we will talk about. We have a meaningful number of tokens left from the community pool on from the pre-mine. So there is meaningful opportunity to really reward early validators when it's more opened up. Obviously we're not going to do that if like Tari Labs or even when we'll figure out like when there's like external parties who are running validator nodes. Maybe it starts with the Tari Council, as like a starting group of people who are trusted and are really care about the protocol. But we want to make sure that there's like ample incentive for people to want to do this work, right? Like that's kind of cornerstone to how a protocol like Tari works. So it's really like two things. One is transaction fee revenue flowing back to validator node operators, and number two is potentially this idea around creating additional incentive, especially in the early days, by leveraging tokens from the pre-mine. Does that answer your question, Fox?
I think so.
What else? Any other questions for the amazing Stan or Esphir while we have them here? I have a question. Stan, what is the your most favorite thing that you've had the opportunity to work on as it relates to the L2? Like the either the thorniest problem that you've had to solve so far, or the thing that you've like enjoyed the most in terms of the development process around the OODL?
So there's been so much. I mean, the thorniest is consensus for sure. Like going from working on the L1 and Nakamoto consensus is quite simple, really. Like compared to hot stuff, and so like getting my head around that was a big lift. And then I think, I don't know, I would maybe choose the execution engine, the WASM ecosystem. both on the author side and on the back end on the engine side was a lot of fun to play with. And hopefully we've built something quite powerful there. But yeah.
That's
I guess
awesome.
we got a couple of questions in the chat. One of which is, you mentioned in the forum thread that current wallets don't support interactive payments. Does the protocol still support the combined one-sided plus interactive addresses so that a third-party wallet developer would be able to utilize PayJoin P2EP to break transaction graph linkability?
So
This is
yes,
a L1
and
question.
no, no, that's that one, yeah. Yes and no. So technically the protocol still supports it. The reason we've done away with interactive transactions is just to get rid of Tor in the wallets, because wallet communication is a massive problem. That is, especially if you have a wallet running on a PC, you've got a stable internet connection, that's okay. But as soon as you go mobile, it becomes like a massive problem. Like if you don't, the only way to reliably connect wallets mobile to mobile is going through iOS or Google Android stuff. Like there's no decentralized reliable way. Tor is super unreliable. We've had endless issues trying to get that to work properly. So that's the main reason for dropping interactive payments. Now the second part is breaking the transaction graph linkability. So the way Tari works, that is not feasible at all. We specifically, that's consensus protocol. That's, if you look at the Tari RFC stuff, you can Tari script RFC. We've introduced mechanisms specifically to stop cut through, and that kind of you can still join massive transactions. You're never going to get rid of certain inputs, like kind of normal where you can leave out inputs and never validate them because you got the combined kernels to do the whole movable sum or the conventional transaction sum. But in Tari, because we have the scripts, you need to validate the scripts to make sure you can't shortcut the scripts. You need to have all the inputs there. So you can never completely destroy the transaction graph, but you can make it more difficult by combining transactions. Definitely that you can do, but the inputs will still be there. So that's the first part. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not so much that you can link things, but it does make the sort of anonymity set a bit smaller. And like cut through isn't really like a privacy feature though. Like it's just a property of Mimblewimble. But yeah.
Yeah, like you could do with Grin, which is Dandelion, it's kind of like a privacy thing, but like all the tests have shown, like in order for Dandelion to properly work, you need a very big, very active network. Otherwise, just listening on the mempool, you can kind of figure out which transaction belongs to which transaction, or which input and output belongs to which transaction.
Yep.
All right, and number 2, what's the status of the difficulty algorithm consecutive block penalty adjustment? Is there an ETA or anything we as a community can do to help speed that up?
I think that's basically getting approval. So are we deciding we're going to do that? Then we can start implementing it. Due to the nature of this being a hard fork, so after we've decided we want to do this and we've implemented the code, we've tested it is probably a minimum 3 months, I think, on the safe side of just letting everyone notify this is upcoming. We're going to do this. The release is there. Just so we can upgrade the nodes, all the exchanges. Something to upgrade because that is going to be consensus breaking. That's a proper hard fork.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's really too difficult.
Part of what we're going to be doing here as it relates to the council is evolving our decision-making process together, right? So, that this is a really good example of a thing that's been suggested within the community, something that, is going to benefit the community. And so, Fox, what we're going to have to do, when the council is established is, this will probably be like one of the very first decisions the council makes, like in collaboration with the community. And we're gonna, kind of refine our decision-making process as a group, for these kinds of things. Because these kinds of things are going to come up all the time, right? There's going to be suggestions, ideas, thoughts from within the community, people who are lobbying, advocating for things. And this is very important because this is a community-run project. There's no It's not a dictatorship. Yes, people like myself and Stan and Sphere, are what I like to call instigators. We're instigators of Tari. But the goal here is to make this a lot more community run and community oriented, right? So yeah, I think but to Sphere's point, it's a non-trivial change. It's a hard fork. It will require some time and some effort to make that change.
Cool. Thanks to Kinkajou for those 2 questions, by the way.
Love Kinkajou. Kinkajou is a rock star. Go ahead.
So pruning is, yeah. So pruning is basically, so you want, but pruning is your node can effectively delete all spent inputs. Like you only need to keep track of the unspent sets. So the work I did lately on the latest pre-releases, like communication, the size difference in the database. So there's the latest official release still has a large database. It's still 110 gigs, I think. But the pre-release fixes the database to go down to like 60-ish gigs. But the pruning mode nodes run about 20-ish gigs. So they drop a lot of data that's all unspent or spent UTXOs that you don't need to keep track of anymore. You don't need that for consensus. So that's Google's biggest advantage is scalability. So you don't have to keep track of the entire chain. You only need to keep track of the unspent set and effectively the kernels, which is a summary of the history, basically. So prune mode is in beta, if I can call it that. Like it's supposed to be working. I'm busy tracking. There might be some issue. I'm not exactly sure. I'm busy debugging it. But last I properly looked into it, it was supposed to be working. So that's why I was saying it is in beta at the moment. So you can, if you open up your config, the base node, and you set your pruning horizon, your node will swap to a prune mode.
Any other questions for our esteemed guests today? And we're going to do this more frequently, by the way, just so everyone knows. I've not spoken to Stan and Sphere about that, but I think there probably should be some fairly regular cadence where we all get together. Are you guys cool with that?
Missing the thumbs up icon here.
Oh, did you need a repeat? Oh, yeah. I feel like there was supposed to be some way to do that, but I guess there isn't.
I can't find any.
Oh, one thing I want to highlight for everyone that I think is really important that contributors did recently is we doubled the bridge limits. So that
We
was
can put them in the chat.
That was another thing that happened recently over the last week. So I want to give a shout out to the team for doing that. Sorry, there's a dog here that is howling. So if you hear a howl, that's what's happening. I'm not a wolf. I've not become a wolf. We only have one wolf on stage, and it's Sphere. All right. Yes, that will be happening I mean, first we're going to announce the council, obviously, and then we'll organize the first set of conversations for the council. Okay, let's see if there's other things on the list here. Just checking. Let's see. Oh, there was one bounty issued and merged. There was a UTXO race condition fix from San Rishi. So I want to give a huge shout out to San Rishi for that. And there's a new Oodle bounty that's out there for 150,000 XTM. So that's another opportunity that's out there for the community to participate. And yeah, those are the other topics I have. Are there any other questions, comments, topics from anyone in the community? It's a great opportunity if anyone wants to come up on stage or ask a question. We're here to chat about anything related to Tari.
Question of a sociologist for this project. Minimum rambling. Just hold on. Let me quickly respond to that in the chat. Just ask, man. So it looks like someone is preparing a question. In the meantime,
we're awaiting the question.
They are typing. If you hear a strange meowing sound, that is my cat.
Okay, well, I prefer meowing over howling. Howling, it's not as great. Oh, I think so. I think this is way better. I mean, like this is great. If the community prefers this, I think we just do it. Like we just make it happen.
Yeah.
What's your
I'm
vibe, Fox?
enjoying this
Is that your feeling?
Yeah, I feel much more comfortable on this system than with X. I've had way more problems with X than I've had with Discord, and I like the general vibe of the experience here.
Well, I mean, this is actually like a proper, feature within Discord. I feel like Spaces on X was always like a bolt-on, and it's kind of like it's just not great. It's just not a great piece of software. I mean, it breaks all the damn time. This feels like, people do this on Discord all the time, and it's kind of built for this. So let's use a product that's actually purpose built together,
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. Nonio posted something. I'm not quite sure I understand the question. I request for certain branching of our thought family for working groups of low technical insight but high motivation or mobility. I think what they're asking is what are we expecting out of people that are organizing in working groups? I think the first thing is we haven't fully scoped out working groups yet. Like we're now getting the council assembled, but we did want to like start reaching out on the forums for people that wanted to start working groups and start doing stuff together, because we wanted to make sure that people were talking to each other and collaborating. As for what specific things, I think like when you're organizing a working group, when you're starting together, like working with a group of people, don't worry too much about what you're supposed to do. Just kind of like work on your project, and if you have something that needs like communal access, like you need a tip to suggest an improvement to the project, and you've come up with that as a group, like submit that, right? And I think that's really what you need to be looking at for now. I think the refinement of how we think about working groups will happen more when we have a council to rally around. Oh, we have someone who wants to speak as well. THC, let me invite you to ask a question. Hello, hello.
Hello.
Awesome.
What-
I kind of just wanted to follow up on the question I asked a couple weeks ago. So you guys said you're still deciding whether if you're gonna have like future applications on the Oodle be accessible by Tari Universe. Like I just wanted to like I guess get all the thoughts of the developers here, because I personally think like Tari Universe is very sick. It's probably the best full node I've run. So I just think you guys should be incentivizing people to use that instead of just, going on Google and trying to search for whatever thing and maybe getting fished, or like trying to get like a browser wallet to connect to a site, which is like another layer of centralization, right? Like if you just think about the Ethereum applications, like using MetaMask, if Infura is down, right, you can't even connect. So I think like the OG cypherpunk vision is that you should be running your own node and accessing applications through that.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I mean, so you're bringing up actually 2 points, right? Point number one is discoverability and safety. And you bring up some very good points about phishing on Google. Google Ads are notorious for that. So many people have lost, very large amounts of money in crypto because, we're all human beings, and they search for something, and, that they're used to using, and then someone has, bought a fraudulent ad on Google, and then they sign a transaction, and now they've lost, all their money, right? Like that's how that happens, like all the time. It even happens today, right? That's still an ongoing set of problems, for the community, for the crypto community at large, right? So that's one thing you're bringing up, and I think Tara Universe can certainly help with that tremendously, by virtue of essentially, the Tari Council and members of the Tari community who are trusted, identifying applications that are, quote unquote, known safe. I do think it's very important to build a muscle within the Tari community for members of the community to validate things on their own, because members of the Tari Council are human beings as well, and we are liable to make mistakes. And now we also live in a world where these AI products are so good at finding bugs, and people are doing all kinds of crazy shit out there. Like, I'm sure you've seen the massive rise in supply chain attacks is a huge problem in the open source community. I mean, like, how many npm packages have been infected with trojans and other kinds of things over the course of time? So it's really kind of dicey out there these days in terms of like installing software, just broadly speaking. I mean, one of the things I do personally in my own practice is, around open source software, I'm always pinning to earlier releases, unless it's some like 0-day, kind of situation where like, you got to update your software because there's like some massive security vulnerability. Like, I'm pinning to at least like a week old software because I'm so nervous just purely about supply chain attacks now. And so I think there's like a safety dimension to what you're talking about, which I completely agree with. And that's one part of what you're talking about. The second part that you're talking about is just the natural decentralized nature of Tari Universe, right? The fact that, when you're running Tari Universe, you're a node on the network, you're mining Tari, and that creates like a far more like decentralized, definitely very cypherpunk sort of dimension to the entire experience and the product overall. And I also agree with that, and I think that what I believe is there's effectively going to be like two modes of operation here for tablets within the world of Tari. I think there will be tablets that exist within Tari Universe, and I think the community clearly wants that, and people are going to build that, and that's going to naturally happen within the community. I also think there are going to be tablets that live outside of Tari Universe, and I think that's perfectly okay. I think at the end of the day, who are we to say that, or who am I to say, or anybody is to say that, oh, a taplet has to live within Tara Universe. Maybe the taplet is built for agents and lives outside of Tara Universe, and that's perfectly fine too. So I think that it's going to be very kind of like interesting to see how it all evolves. But I mean, the core points that you're making, I think, have tremendous merit, and I completely agree with. That was a great question, DHC. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. No, I just think it's really cool because there's literally no other blockchain like at least like what do you call it? Like a programmable blockchain where you can do like everything on the full node itself, right? So I just think that's a really unique, cool property of Tari.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I have a lot of bias. That's something I fought for a lot within the Tari community. So I'm very much agree with you. So okay, unfortunately, we have to come to a close in the space for now. But I want to give a huge shout out to Stan and to Esphere for participating today. I want to give a huge shout out to Simon for all of your work that you're doing. I want to give a huge shout out to Kinkajou for arranging the space today on Discord. A huge shout out to Fox for being, such a, prominent member of the community, someone who's fighting for Tari every single day, and someone who's genuinely very excited to build their own things on Tari. I want to give a huge shout out to DHC for coming up here and asking like a really great question. Yes, Dennis, I'm giving you a huge shout out too. I see you and we love you. I also want to give a huge shout out to JJ for coming up here and asking great questions. So this is our very first space we've done. We're not even gonna call them spaces anymore. I mean, fuck Twitter and fuck Elon, by the way. Oh, I love Elon. Elon's a great entrepreneur. But anyway, screw Twitter. They're no longer called spaces. I don't know what we're gonna call these. Just Tari community hangs or whatever we choose to call them here on Discord. But this is definitely a better experience, and we will be here next week, same time, same location on Discord. So thank you all again for participating, and we will see you next week.
All right. Thank you.